special meeting of the Palmyra-Eagle Area School Board to order at 5:35. Can we have the roll call?
Doris Parsons.
Here.
Jean Reef.
Here.
Michael Eddy.
Here.
Mitzi Rozwitzky.
Here.
Tara Leroy.
Here.
Zachary Rukowski.
Here.
Christiana Williams. Here.
Okay, with the declaration of the quorum, I will read the district mission statement. To ensure that students excel with intellect, and virtue, inspired by innovative educators who engage and challenge each individual. Would you join me for the pledge of allegiance?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I would like to table action item 11A, consider approval of administrative contract until our August 11th meeting.
Are there any other changes or additions? You can, we've so far read that one, so if you want a second, and if there's no others. Any discussion? Just an explanation that we're tabling that because the administrator and our business manager have not been able to meet in person to actually make sure everything's firmed and organized, and we didn't want to approve something that none of us have physically seen yet. So it's not any other changes. We already approved the position and all of that. We just want to make sure we've got it in front of us when we actually accept it. Okay, so we approve the agenda with the change. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Agenda stands as amended. Are there any public comments? We didn't get any through email, but are there anyone here? Okay. Absent public comments, we'll move on to board monitoring. A is a preliminary presentation of back to school plan for 2021.
Okay. Do we need a?
The mic doesn't have any better. I just keep putting it on. Maybe walk towards the.
Okay.
Michael, do you want to move? Yeah, I thought.
Yeah.
It was behind doors, but it was so whited out, you couldn't see anything, so. If you want to come over here, we'll find somewhere else to do.
Good.
Okay.
Well, I guess everyone in the administration of the school district has come up with together to make a plan. This involved more than just us, but transportation, food, athletic directors as well. And we think we have a good plan that with board approval, of course, we would be implementing. It's a plan that is trying to make everyone feel at ease with sending their kids to school or having a virtual option. Our main objectives, our main commitments to this was safety. So having our students and the staff health as a top priority. And following guidance from the CDC, the Department of Health in Jefferson County and other counties as well. One of the cornerstones of this plan is flexibility. We will need flexibility to respond to this virus as changing circumstances will lead us to take a different approach perhaps every week or every month. We'll have to be doing it in a different way. And this is because we don't know how hard the virus may affect the area or the community, or maybe we'll be able to keep this plan going for a long time or until we find a solution to this virus. And also to have an equitable instruction for all our students so they all have access to good education, to the best education we can provide them under the e-format. And so there's some blended solutions at the reopening of schools. We think we have come up with a solution that pretty much satisfies everyone's needs. So getting back to school safely. We have a plan, like I said, it's all about the kids. It's all about thinking of their education, their health, and in that way, we have seen that, well, probably the healthiest or less risky situation or solution would be to be all virtual. But our community wants and needs to have schools open so they can bring their kids to school. And we are acknowledging that situation, that need. And so we are providing within this plan also, solutions for everyone that needs it. Recommendations for reopening schools is basically, we have to do it safely. We have to bring, there's masks or face coverings, but not masks are very, very, not just encouraged, but very strongly suggested just to stop the spread of the virus. This is by the CDC, our own health department, Jefferson County, and other counties around the area are recommending this. So we basically have to take all that into account. There's also considerations to liabilities coming from either employees or perhaps people in the community. So we have to take all that into account to put it into this plan and be able to present to you something that is safe for everyone. And then the school district, and it allows us to keep open for as long as we can. So getting back to school safely. Again, that's our goal. And we took into account all of our stakeholders, the government, our people in the community, our teachers, the board, the administration, everyone that was involved, and health and other authorities. So we're going to have the structure of this plan is going through educating and informing. We're going through all the operations, so the physical infrastructure, transportation, food service, all the areas that are involving the school district, athletics, and how sports can be done in the community. Health and behavioral norms, and then we go through instructional models, and then professional development, and at the end, our stakeholder input, which is statistics and letting you know what you yourselves told us and the community about what you were wanting to see in this plan.
All right. So stakeholder input is where we're going to start. I wonder, so I'm going to start with the yellow paper. So this is based on our family, community, student data. So I'm going to go through a couple things. We had 410 responses. I literally updated this about a half hour ago. So somebody taking it since then, it's a little off, but otherwise it should be pretty accurate. 78.3% being current PEAFC parents, 12.4% being community members, and 9.3% being current students. And of those parents and students, 81.3% reported they were comfortable returning to school. So I think right off the bat, we know our community is supporting a return to school. So then we gave instructional option information. If you remember, you kind of ranked first choice, second choice, third choice. So first choice of the parents and the community and the students was 5-day-a-week in-person instruction at about 59%. And then you can see 4-day was virtual, having about a 13.9% response rate. When you're looking at the graph, it's somewhat confusing to me. You have to look at color for the choice. So the first set of data is 5 days, the middle is 4-day, and the third is virtual. And then the blue represents the first choice option, the red represents the second choice, and the orange represents third. So you can see virtual across the board is very much behind in the want. It's the third choice without a doubt. So the other thing we did was put some data together. So if you combine first and second choices, I gotta get a little closer to read that. 80.5% of our community wanted 5-day option as their first or second choice. Even more impressive, 98.8% supported 4-day as the first or second option. So when you look at that, really, I look at it as they're telling you they want to send their kids back to school. So then we went forward and trying to figure out how. So that brings us to some of the other data. in face-to-face. So you will see the data there for the safety measures. I'm not going to go through each and every one of them, but parents and community members could pick one or two or three of them. They could pick a none option. You can see the face coverage at 41%. We're going to continue to cover that as we go on, but that is the current data as of right now. The other interesting thing here, I think, is that people reporting no internet access was 10 votes, so 2.8%. Now, if you don't have internet access, taking a survey, that probably is a difficult connection, but it can be done on the phone, it can be done in various ways. So again, I think that's some data. And almost 70% reported reliable internet for multiple users, which I think is good data to have. So then we also separately surveyed staff. So if you were a parent who was a staff, you took both surveys and could give your feedback to the parent and then provide feedback as a staff. So you can see the breakdown there. About 60%, 57% of the response were teachers, which makes sense, they're our largest pool. And then down the line, school board, food service, support staff, which included aid, IT, secretarial, any of those. So we gave them a sliding scale, trying to get comfort with returning to face-to-face. So a 5 was very comfortable, down to a 1, which was very uncomfortable. So you can see those numbers in front of you. If you combine the very comfortable, the 4 and a 5, you're about 60%. When you throw the 3 in there, you're about 80%. So again, that data told us our staff was comfortable in returning to school and hearing and find out how we would do that, which maybe would allow some of those 2s and 3s to move up the line. We asked them the same questions about what they preferred for an instructional model. What you're going to see here is 4-day was the first and second choice winner. 48% for first, 51% for second choice. I think our staff realized some of the planning advantages, some of the cleaning advantages, some of those things that could be done in a 4-day, which is why that wins. But again, virtual is last with 11.9% as the first option. This was safety measures. We did it a little different for staff. For temperature checks and face covering, we allowed them to split between adults and students. So you can see that, and the face covering here was 66.3 for adults and 43% for staff. No, I'm wrong, it's not 43, 51.2. It's the other data wrong. I'll fix that. I did the number, not the percentage. So we're around 50% for face coverage for both kids and adults. This is nothing?
All right, so I come with my own microphone tonight. This is like the highlight of my day. Waiting for this. So we're kind of testing something else we use in classrooms to help sort of make that connection between learning. I also have a clear take back that goes with it and memory. So you can hear me loud and proud tonight. So we understand that return to school is going to come with a unique set of opportunities to both educate and inform our teachers, our staff, our parents, community, and students. So using guidelines from the CDC, all of these local health departments and appropriate agencies, we're really looking at first and foremost providing intentional instruction in the area of social-emotional support. So those first few weeks, that first month out of the game, really taking the time to assure students that this is a safe place for learning, and that learning might look a little different, but we're here to support all of our students at every level and provide those instructional pieces along the way to make them successful. We have met thoroughly with the correct stakeholders to ensure that we have proper safety signage. So that includes putting CDC educational materials throughout our buildings. It also includes increasing hand washing and hygiene practice signage, really intentionally teaching how we're washing hands, when to stay home, proper face covering issues, and then create protective measures for our students. We also worked out a plan today, which includes directional signage for our hallway. So we're making sure that students are appropriately taking paths that decrease interaction points and provide a consistent mode of travel to keep everything orderly. Our training and information materials, we're really going to be focusing on using those professional development days when we come back to make sure that our staff is trained by the appropriate individuals on safe practices. And we'll be giving informational materials to students and staff through multiple different venues that we'll have access to reinforce those procedures. Our classroom routines have been examined from a K-4 to 12th grade level, and on establishing hand washing and sanitizing as the absolute norm. I hope that it always been the norm, but sort of an increased focus on those practices. And then using teachers and daily announcements and practices to make sure that those routines are established is just how we're operating. We'll be working with families and parents to ensure that we have regular communication about our practices and expectations through email, website, videos, and written communication. But ultimately, parent support is going to be something that is critical to the success. So really urging families to keep sick kids home and follow hygiene practices at home and at school, and reinforcing those measures is something that could make or break the success of our return to school. We're really focusing on how can we improve that relationship to improve the quality of the day for our children.
So, continuing with the operations and physical infrastructure. Like, you're going to hear a lot of the same safety precautions being repeated throughout this because we're applying it to different areas. So, regarding physical barriers within the building, we are planning to establish office spaces, which some of them we've already added, but having those plexiglass barriers for all of our office spaces, so when you're coming into the school, you're coming to the district office, things like that. Because the secretaries tend to be the person who has the most contact with the most students throughout the day. So adding that additional barrier there. The use of fluoride adhesive, we met with Rich today about what would be appropriate to put on floors without chance of damaging floors. So we had discussed the separation stickers for those high traffic areas, those one-way hallway, markers, and trying to create traffic patterns so that it was lighter correcting areas. Regarding safety signage again, and hygiene, social distancing is done, we will have safety signage throughout the entire building, emphasizing those. Drinking water, the bottle filling stations, because we have a handful, a couple in each building, where you can put the bottle in there without having to physically touch anything, those will still be available to students. However, to be able to push it and drink straight out, we'll have covered. Students will need to provide spill-proof water bottles. We don't want kids having just have a big cups or everything in the classroom. And no sharing of the water bottles. We did discuss providing some water bottles if students need them and things like that. And the use of potentially at times paper disposable cups if we need. Sanitation stations, we're going to increase placement and encourage usage in each room for those hand sanitizers with requiring students to use it before entering each room. So we need to hand sanitizer for in the cafeteria, hand sanitizer for the classroom, things like that. And we're going to add those to classrooms and to common areas wherever we can. For locker usage, it's pretty limited to elementary, so there will be some limited use coming into school, leaving school, things like that. Middle and high school will be allowed to use a backpack, so that will eliminate a lot of the need to go to their lockers throughout the day. And the athletic lockers will be utilized with space for distancing. So in order to kind of create physically more space to have this distancing within our buildings, we've been working on removing furniture. A lot of the elementary school was when furniture was brought in or when they were sending the classes, it was already planned with this in mind. So the high school is going to be making some steps to kind of clear out some furniture, move some things around, reconfigure your spaces to make sure that the physical space in the classroom and other settings are kind of following those regulations. And if they aren't allowed that 6 feet spacing, then we'll do what we can to space out as far as possible. Continuing curating our healthy environments, looking at our ventilation system, our air exchange does exceed state recommendations, but following CDC recommendations, we will increase air circulation throughout our air as much as possible, and one of those things like that. Disinfecting, we will increase our daily and weekly protocols, making sure that disinfecting is happening on a daily basis, and between classes and major transitions. Shared objects, we are going to encourage students to have their own materials as much as humanly possible. There will be some instances for some degree of sharing that will be happening, so teachers and students will be trained on how to properly handle that and sanitize as needed. The communal spaces, we're going to stagger the use of and increase cleaning protocols, so our common areas in the middle school and things like that, if they're going to be utilizing that, then we'll make sure that they're clean after use. Hand hygiene, a lot of the CDC recommendations and Jefferson County Health and Human Services recommendations emphasize the need to be teaching, like direct instruction of students, what is the proper technique to washing your hands, what is thoroughly disinfecting, and things like that. So we plan, especially going hard right at the start of school, to be doing a lot of our instruction with our students. How to be sanitary, how to do the spacing, how to still be with your friends, but being in a safe way. So a lot of that teaching and reinforcing can happen with, again, strategic signage placement for those reminders and prompts. Face coverings. So we are requiring all staff and students in all grades, when inside the building and outside within 6 feet of another person, should be wearing face coverings. Considerations, of course, will be made for some of our younger learners or individual cases with our IEP and Level 4 students based on individual needs.
This one is more.
No, but it's,
No, it's you, all right. I don't know, some people.
okay. Regarding visitors coming in the buildings, we are going to limit that to non-essential visitors and visits. So if you don't need to be in the building, we want to decrease that from having other people in. The visitors will follow the screening and face covering protocols. They will be required to get into the building to be wearing a mask, and we're going to talk about different ways that we will provide them for people if we need it, or maybe having something else in the door that they can grab a mask out or something along those lines to be able to provide it to them before they walk in that door to a secretary. Trying to use cohorts. At the elementary level, we're going to create more classroom family type to keep the interaction with other students. Like I said, in the high school, middle school, we're going to limit those interactions outside of the classroom grade levels. We're going to again monitor our entrances and exits to try to decrease the amount of students coming in or out at one time. And we're no longer going to allow volunteers into the building. So that's a little bit different than visitors. So, staffing, we're going to reassign staff as needed to cover daily operations. You know, if as things progress, if things start to change, we need more help with some sanitation things or with cafeteria work, then we're going to try to be flexible with the use of our time and what we need for our moving stuff. For our high-risk staff or students, we want to limit their exposure and provide alternatives which would happen, you know, individual basis. We wanted to establish points of contact for COVID-19, so if you have questions, if you are exhibiting symptoms, if you think that you are sick and you need to notify the school, points of contact for each school building would be the administrator, Kate Robertson being in the elementary, Carrie Sir being middle school and high school. If there's an athletic issue, you can go to Joel Soromasi, and any staff issues will go to all three. Communication, we want between all parties, staff, students, families, we want to have frequent and systematic communication, keeping them updated on any changes that occur, and any protocols that need to change within the building. At this point, we are stating that we are limiting and monitoring conditions before final approval for trips and gatherings to be permitted. So at this point, I don't know, we could say year and it is could or couldn't happen, depending on what it is and what event we're looking at. Okay, transportation. So we met with Lakeland Coachland earlier today and kind of talked about some of the safety precautions that they can legally do and are willing to do versus some of the things that we are recommending on wanting to see. So student capacity on our buses, as much as possible, we want to have one child to seat, unless they are in the same household. I think that's a way that we can kind of save some of the space because they're already exposed to each other. So if we have siblings or the same household, having them sit together and space everyone else out. We are going to require the use of masks, and we'll have some available in the column we have to disclose. We're going to encourage the students to sit as close to the window as possible to create a little bit more social distancing with no food or drinks all around us. Regarding our amount of drivers and capacity, that'll need to be determined once we know exactly the students we have, accommodations and things like that. And we are strongly encouraging parents or students to self-transport if at all possible to reduce the number of students that we have confined out to us. Preventative measures, we talked with the bus company in detail about this and what they kind of recommend. At this point, they are recommending their drivers wear the face coverings while driving to ensure maximum visibility and safety. But they did state multiple times that they are most likely the bus company will have different regulations coming out. Legal ones, and they'll keep us that information as it comes up. The buses will completely disinfect buses between each route, with special attention to those high-touch areas. Regarding students with IEPs, the IEP-driven accommodations review with documentation will happen on an individual basis in posting. The self-transport, again, we are encouraging families to transport on
some thoughts she had and compared kind of some other ones. So some of these things you're going to see are normal food service practices. They're nothing different, but I think it's still important to highlight them. So we're back to the hand washing and hand sanitizing. You're going to see it over and over and over again. It's going to be key. Again, sanitation, sanitizer stations outside before entering the cafeteria will be available. No shared food at any time. This is going to be a big one, I think, with the little kids, but getting through to them that you really can't swap your sandwich with your neighbor is going to be a big deal. Elementary, lunchtime, they're going to be having grade level cohorts that will be able to be distanced and possibly even separated by barriers in between in the cafeteria. 3 lunch periods will easily ensure the ability to get them all through with their cohorts and a distance plan. I don't have that luxury up here, so instead we're just going to open up as much space as we can. So we're going to use cafeteria. Obviously, we're going to utilize outside, we're going to utilize the gym, we're going to utilize the library. We're going to utilize a lot of space to allow them to distance. A cohort, I understand doesn't truly exist, but we know kids who've been around kids, and that's kind of my recommendation is eat, be with someone that you're comfortable being around, still maintaining distances. So looking at that. But allowing them to use a variety of spaces will be key. So cafeteria procedure is a big one. So starting with, if you've ever had a kid come to the lunch line, they punch in their code, that's one. So we'll do barcodes at the elementary school. The food service employee will scan. Up here, we'll do some scanning or inputting, but eventually we'll get their barcodes on their ID so that the field will hold them up to the reader and go through. So that will get touchless there. We are looking at a completely contactless food line. So what that would mean is the child would be handed a lunch tray that has silverware on it, and then they would continue down to get food, or they'd be handed their milk there as well. All the food will be served to them, so we used to do self-serve vegetables, fruit, condiments, things like that. It'll all be served to them or provided in disposable containers. So no touching of any of that. High school a la carte, which is some of our breakfast items and the prepackaged chips and granola bars and things like that. They will be able to take those items and go, but we will have hand sanitizer in there they need to use before touching them. And then again, the signage is going to be key, especially here at a time to control flow of kids, make sure they're standing part in line, those types of things. The next part of food service is about staff, and this really is very common to what they've been doing. So obviously proper training for handling of food. One of the differences is they're going to be wearing face coverings at all times when dealing with food or in the cafeteria, so that could be different. Then you're looking at standard washing, cleaning, sanitizing, disinfecting. Again, just exactly how they have done. Hand hygiene is a huge one for there. And a couple of the other times we looked at, they have a long list of times you should wash your hands, even if they don't appear dirty. So that's going to be key. And then again, cleaning everything, following school lunch program guidelines, exactly as we have them right now, and just obviously moving forward with that. Next one is a little bit about staffing. So we would work to conduct in-person meetings, either in a large space, such as this, virtually if possible, and then face coverings are required if we're in the building. So my staff is sitting here can attest the last meeting of the year we met here. Lots of room for people to spread out. Things will continue like that. Daily screener, which we're going to get to what that looks like, but staff will be required to complete a daily screener to monitor, self-monitor health. And no shared food for them either, so potlucks in the workroom are done, no shared refreshments, any of that. That's going to be a key moving forward. Face coverings for staff will be determined as appropriate by their position. So for example, if you are a speech pathologist, wearing a full mask that with no window is going to be something that's challenging. So different people may look different, but everyone will be wearing face coverings. Some may be wearing a shield in addition, again, depending on their position, and we will work to provide staff with at least one face covering appropriate for their position. Athletics and activities, I couldn't let Joel come up and talk about this one, but Joel and I talk, and really we're being guided by the WIA. Obviously, we're following what they are putting out. Joel can attest to me sat through the end of and various parts of a very long meeting the other day in which they determined high and medium or low risk sports. They've already done some pushing back. We're going to do what they guide us to do and follow those precautions in line with ours. If we return to school, the assumption is we would do as many events and activities as we safely can. If we are not in school or out at some other virtual sports or things like that. Again, that communication is gonna be key. The other thing here, you're gonna see this moving between models come up now, starting a little bit more. But just because we have a full basketball season planned, if we are changing our instructional model, there may be a loss of games, there may be a loss of events, and there could be a cost issue depending on what safety measures we have to take in place, so obviously we have to keep that in mind. This is the main.
Just some of the health and behavioral norms Gary mentioned, the self-screener. So this is actually a link that you can click on, you can go and look at it if you want. It's taken directly from CDC. So literally 10 pages from CDC, their checklist for staff and for students. For what you would do with your own symptom checker in the morning. We are not requiring it to be done at school as you did. We are getting best faith that families are doing it at home, teachers are doing it daily. You're not coming to school if you have a fever, including, even if I have a fever but I took Tylenol and my fever's not there, we're including that. The parents should not send your student to school if you have that fever or if you are showing symptoms based on that checklist. If students come to school and are showing symptoms, the reason we are doing it to check for all students at school is we just have regulations and confidentiality purposes. However, if a student does come to school and are showing symptoms, at that point we will do further evaluation of that individual, so taking temperatures and things like that, and contacting parents. And quarantine them if the fever is. Face coverings will be required again of all staff and students. Daily routines continued. Again, regular hygiene practices will be used, including the hand washing, hand sanitizing, proper tissues, cloths, measures, corrective measures, and each building will have a separate space designated for general health concerns. If a student has a headache or if a student, is having whatever, they can go to a health food for versus potential COVID symptoms. So we are going to keep those locations separate, so there's not an interaction between students. COVID-19 positive cases. So if an individual at one of our schools is identified with a positive COVID-19 case, PESC will work with the county health department to ensure that all proper safety protocols are followed regarding contact tracing and quarantines. And in order to keep confidentiality and following HIPAA, PESC does recognize that an individual's health stance is personal and private matter, and therefore, PESC shall handle information about students' and employees' health status in accordance with state.
All right, so now, so taking into account all of the different results you have, and recognizing that the full 5-day in person and the 4-day modifier to this is overwhelmingly the preferred start for our community, we're going to start going through some of those instructional models. Now, you have an opportunity at the end to ask questions, because there are a lot of components that go along with this. And recognizing that this doesn't cover all of the needs of each of these models, and nor is everything appropriate to each level of education. So there's some things that are highlighted in different areas for a variety of reasons. So with our instructional model in September, the full day, 5-day in-person learning, the students and staff will return to the classroom and practice those operational safety procedures we talked about to reduce the spread of COVID-19. So staff may be assigned support distancing and safety procedures, which will enable students to return to the classroom. Teachers will receive intentional professional development related to those health and safety practices and be able to support students during this challenging time. And we're also going to be able to support students who are learning using technology. Our schedules have been intentionally modified. Areas may include lunch or recess, or those entrances and exits in the school to allow for the utilization of more outside spaces and as much reduced classroom travel as we possibly can get. Our communication with families will be ongoing and systematic. And then in terms of resources, to make sure that our instructional model of full day, 5-day person learning, we really want to focus on the fact that our 6th through 12th graders will be provided a district Chromebook that they'll be able to bring home and then bring back to school and properly sanitize on their device. Our 1st to 5th grade students will have a district provided Chromebook, but that's going to be kept at school but not shared by other students, so something that's an independent device. Now, when we're instructing that full 5-day model, it's with the increased use of these tools to help enhance our learning, because we may need to move among models. So we may need to move among those models based on cases that have been around and the direction from our Jefferson County Health Department. So if they guide our direction of opening and closing and quarantines and things like that, we're gonna make sure that we have a strong, instructional base that includes technology tools to support learning in the classroom. When it comes to alternatives for this program, instructional models may be individually include blended and virtual options on a case-by-case basis for those families that reach out to the district. We're currently forming a technology committee within our district that's representative of a wide variety of individuals, and they're going to be shaping exactly what those alternatives may look like and some of the things that we're able to offer students that support their learning needs. And so it's also important to know that as those alternatives are developed, we're asserting that the alternative instructional models are not interchangeable, and that's something that aligns very closely with many of our Jefferson County neighbors, where we're asking families to make a time commitment to that alternative instructional model until an appropriate time when we need to change, so that we can plan accordingly for the needs of our students. All right, now the blended learning, the 4-day in-person classroom learning, this is a highly coveted second choice by our community, and this is the first choice for the majority of our staffing needs here at the district. So this would include a Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday schedule, where students come in person and they're here for full-day face-to-face learning. So that's kind of just exactly what the 5-day plan does. But on Wednesday, there's no physical in school. Instead, Wednesday represents an opportunity for several things to happen. It represents the opportunity to deep clean. It represents an opportunity to really develop teachers as professional virtual instructors and support their professional needs. It allows our facilities to be properly maintained and attended to on a regular basis. So you're looking at no more than 16 hours of student contact before the deep clean is occurring. Students will still use the district device. Home internet access becomes vital for all students. And we look back at that survey data. We saw that there were some areas a lot bolster, but the majority of our community has positive access. And so on Wednesday, teachers also have the opportunity to work one-on-one with students, work in small groups virtually, catch kids up, push kids ahead and get individual projects. There's just a myriad of opportunities. And then as well, this early identification piece for the 4-day, it allows us to quickly identify students who may be struggling to engage, so that if we should need to change to a different model, we have those students on our radar right away. The resources to make this happen. So all students will need to have access to a school device that supports the materials and curriculum we're using. We will continue to use a traditional grading and assessment structure during the utilization process of a 4-day. We're going to continue to communicate, and then just as always, you're going to see this repeated, moving among models. Our transition in the spring was a pretty curt one that I don't think anyone was quite prepared for. This 4-day model allows us to be the most maximum amount of prepared we possibly could be should something similar to what happened in March happen again. But again, those decisions will be guided by the Jefferson County Health Department. All right, now virtual learning. So this was very clearly the last choice of preference as a universal model for both staff and students and community. This is no face-to-face classroom learning, and it could be targeted or district-wide. We could use this for short-term if needed for a specific student or a specific classroom, or we could go district-wide with virtual learning. Each building is going to determine what's appropriate in terms of an instructional model and engagement requirements for students. Virtual learning may include live instructional lessons, videos, projects, individual work, small group work, and teachers will be available daily for student and parent contact. We're going to follow that same device format, making sure we have access to devices to the students who need them. We're still going to take that daily attendance and expect that there's engagement on the students we have. And we're going to continue those traditional grading and assessment practices. Communication is going to still increase, and we're also going to supplement when necessary with the possibility of hands-on materials or manipulatives for younger students, things that they may need to come in and pick up. With our virtual learning option, we also want to make sure too that teachers are continuing to quickly identify students who are struggling to engage and meet their needs more appropriately so that we can get the maximum amount of learning out of our virtual option.
So last thing is kind of important additional considerations, and the first part there that I'm sure the part everyone's been waiting for, how do we close, how do we open, what happens and when it happens. So I want to give you a little bit of background. Alfredo and I have been working very closely with all the Jefferson County schools. In addition, County. A big thanks to Mark Ellison at Jefferson. He gave us a ton of information that we were able to use and kind of move forward with. Jefferson County has also contracted, I guess for lack of a better word, with an epidemiologist, and that is the person who's really going to be developing the plan as far as what the cases mean, when we close, when we open. So obviously the health department have the opportunity to come in and close us at any time, so that could happen just like it happened in March. But really, if a local decision needed to be made, we would work closely with Jefferson County, we would work closely with state health department, we would work with our nurse, we would work with the school board, and we would work with the epidemiologist to decide if and when we needed to close. There is going to be like a flow chart developed that's in the works. We have a meeting Thursday. I think we'll find more out about that. One of the things I found that was interesting is it's not all about positive cases or all about cases in general. It's about the rate of positive cases and a lot about track, which is why you saw positive test tracking and things like that, because if you can tell where a case came from and you can make that direct link, your risk factors are less than if you have no idea where your case came from. So there will be a lot of that. So I know that's going to be a question is when to close and how, and really right now, kind of the guidance we're getting is work with the health department and wait for that plan and move forward. I probably shouldn't have titled this student discipline, but this is a lot. It's going to be a lot for kids. It's a lot for adults. It's a lot for me. It's not going to look the same. We understand that. I met with some kids today. I understand they want normal, but we have to work in the world of where we are right now. So we understand it's going to be difficult. We're going to work every way we can to help them understand, from my seniors down to the 4K kids, why we are where we are. We have great kids, I say it all the time. I'm confident that everyone is going to want their teachers, their staff members, their classmates, their parents, their grandparents to be safe, and then we're going to work together to keep school that way. If we have issues, of course there's going to be parental contact and there's going to be conversation. Obviously there are some really hot button issues in here, and there are some things that are not going to be fun to be policing constantly, but again, if we can explain rationale and reasons, I'm confident that we will all work together. I believe those relationships that we create, which we do an awesome job at, really are going to be the key to success. Parent events. So we already have addressed visitors and volunteers, but we have events like open house and orientations and parent-teacher conferences that do require parents to come in the building. So we're going to work to structure those so that we are socially distanced, so that we're kind of following the rules we've set up for our kids, face coverings and all of that. IEP meetings, 5 to 4, other student concern meetings may be held virtually if possible. If not, again, they'll follow those same rules and regulations. The other thing I think on everybody's mind is you have very unique learning environments. Bi-ed, tech ed, art, 4K, cooking, all of those. We have to work more specifically on some individual plans there. Meeting with Rich today, he gave us a lot of ideas and he's working into some ways to quickly sanitize, to quickly clean. A lot of conversation with potting of kids at this level, so they're only exposed within their kind of group of 3 or 4. Shared materials is another big thing we're trying to kind of work through, whether kids bring their own, whether we group them somehow to only have them utilizing them. But those are kind of some concerns that we know aren't hanging out there yet, and we'll continue to work with. Our small class size, and we never even mentioned that, is going to be a huge advantage in this. You know, we have lots of room to spread this out. We have lots of room to work together. I think if we follow along with what we've set up, we should be able to open and not have any issues. Anybody want to add anything for a simple question?
I guess just as in general, we thought of you, of every one of you. We tried to come up with a plan that basically addresses all of your concerns. And at some point later on, because this is not an open question, this is just for the board, but we can address your concerns if you have any. Thank you.
The other thing I would tell you in relation to Jefferson County, they do not approve plans, but they have seen this plan and given me a little bit of feedback, given us a little bit of feedback, and we've made some tweaks. But in the long, they say it was good to present to you, and they feel we're on the right track, but they don't approve anything like that. They support of, I believe, is the word in the code. Support of Jefferson County. And I also would like to tell you, because the problem will come up, I reached out to Waukesha County Health Department and got no response back. From what I can gather and what Katie and Alfredo and Kayla have heard, those Waukesha schools are really kind of working on their own. So is really where we've kind of gone at this point. I'm done. All right.
So what questions do you have? I know this is a ton of information. What can we clarify for you? What can we add on, elaborate, discuss? What questions do you have for us?
Well, you gave us 3 different options. We're going with the 5-day one?
I think as we presented it, 5-day is the community choice. And that's, I think, where we put as a September start. I do think there's definite community choice for the 4-day. And I think we needed to present some things about virtual because if we get there at some point, we don't want to just be pulling it out of our hand. So as we presented it, September start was 5-day unless we're directed differently by the board. Anybody want to?
And I have to say that for liability purposes, we need to be offering a virtual option right from the start. So parents that want to have their kids virtual, they can do it. That's my strong recommendation from lawyers and all sorts of people in the community.
Would those parents be able to switch mid-semester? Because some school districts are saying you as a parent have to decide prior to the first day of school, you are going to be 5-day or virtual, and they will not let them change until semester. Has that been done?
In the 5-day slide, it refers to, or in the, right here, it talks about alternative instructional models are not interchangeable. So we need to have some amount of grading period where the kids stay either in face or virtual.
And that doesn't mean that it needs to be an all year or
Yes.
semester if you plan it, but certainly for a grading period, for a variety of reasons, both planning, staffing, student supplies, and other. So what we would discourage for students' stability in learning is that for 1 week we're trying to go virtual, the next week we decide we want to come to school. That's not what we're student learning. We want whatever the family feels is best to commit to that for a length of time.
And if I may add, if at some point someone wants to become virtual, that's probably a better avenue to follow. So let them become virtual, then just be switching like they're saying. We don't want to be, just 1 week, 1 day you're virtual, the other one you're physical.
So what are you going to do if the kid gets sick and they have to quarantine for 14 days? They just don't learn anything?
No, we would have to address that. I mean, I would assume that student would return to school as a traditional student. So just like when any kid gets sick, we would have to figure out what amount of work can they do at home? Can they at some point become a remote learner? Or from what I know, the variance of the illness is a lot. So what the student and family can do remotely would have to be what we support. But I don't look at that, Zach, as a switching between models.
Right.
It's not, you're sick, that doesn't mean you don't want to come to school. I look at it more as a choice of, you look at the data and that, whatever it is, 12%, I believe, let me go the right way. So if that 9.3%, that's not an illness issue. Now, if it's a medical issue unrelated to COVID, again, that's a conversation either with a medical planner, an IEP, or 504, or whatever. But we're not talking about kids who are sick. We're not talking about kids who have COVID. We're talking about kids who do not, or families do not want to send them to school. That's where that choice of a model comes in.
A few questions for you. As far as getting responses on the surveys, how comfortable or confident do you feel that we've reached a wide variety and reached as many of our families as we should have? And how have we communicated with them, and have we done any extra communications to encourage completion of that, so that we're making sure that we are getting to all of the families, or as many as we can?
I think Carlin might be able to confirm, it went out twice via Connect 5, 2 families, obviously. It went out, Phelan can maybe confirm, did it go out on social media?
Yeah.
Went out on the website, all of that. I agree with you, I don't look at 4. 10 is an amazing response. In hindsight, there was wording in one of the questions about only complete it once for your child. So, I'll use Kaylee and Matt since she's standing here. They may have interpreted that as only Kaylee or Matt should do it, where I meant only answer it once for your 2 kids. So there was probably some wording there, and those of you that have kids, I don't know if you interpreted that wording that way or not. But I mean, I feel like it went out in all the typical avenues we would use. The community response is low. I did email it to my kids, 6 through 11, because that's where they're 5 to 11, because that's where they sit right now. I don't think the kids check their email very much at home. You know, I could do one more kid push, but I don't know that their data, I was more interested in the parent data, to be honest.
And if I may add, that leads more to we need to have an option so people can say, okay, in person when they are, you know, either registering their kids or actually coming to school, they can choose, okay, we choose this or we choose that amongst the two models, basically physical or virtual, just to be sure and to be safe.
And also, I've had a lot of questions about the potential use of Palmyra Elementary. Is that additional space that you think we won't need to take advantage of at this time? Or is that really going to be based on what our final enrollment numbers are going to be looking like?
That number is going to be highly dependent on what our final enrollment number is. So right now I have 4 additional classrooms that at any time I can repurpose for straight classroom use. We do have a number of pull-out rooms available as well. So one of the things that we're trying to do when we're talking about cohorting students, something that would happen is instead of students leaving to go other places, we're trying to reduce the amount of opportunities that happen. So we're looking at taking certain individuals in certain cases and pushing into classrooms. So then I have those additional spaces available that they would traditionally go to. So right now, I think normally yesterday was sitting at unofficially like 257. So at this point, I have 4 additional full classrooms and some extra spaces. But if we certainly exceeded that enrollment number, then we could look at PES as an alternative option.
I think one of the other things is a lot of the measures we've been able to put in food service and cleaning are a lot more tangible because it's 2 buildings now. So that would probably require a relooking at food service staffing and custodial staffing to implement what we said we would do in 3 buildings versus 2.
And do you have an overall idea of what because registration closes on the 30th?
Yeah.
Do we know where we're at right now?
That I don't. I never checked that with AMPOP. I don't know if you checked, and if you have any idea where we are.
No, I need to check with her about that.
Does she have an idea what percentage has completed or anything like that?
No, not yet. I mean, we're still early.
I also had a very important question from some teenage boys. They were concerned about the use of vending machines in the school.
Yeah, I think that's probably going to be a challenge. And that is very much willing to try and take some of that in as far as the a la carte items and some of that, but
They could bring their own.
there's a lot of touch points in a vending machine, but they are still sitting there right now, so.
They can bring their own snacks in their backpack.
What?
They can bring their own snacks in their
Yeah, and
backpack.
they can always bring their own food in, they just can't sell it and share it and all of that.
They can become their own vending machine.
Yeah, they can't become their own vending machine out of their backpack, that's not gonna work.
Can I ask a question about the COVID, like if someone does have it
Yeah.
and coming back, is Jefferson County giving any advice? Is that they need to be tested and negative before they can return, or is it just?
That has not been discussed, I'll be real honest, and due to some of those things Kaylee talked about, the confidentiality issue, we may never know, this is a small place and nerds travel very fast, but the health department will not call and give us much information other than maybe a grade and an age, or even for an adult. That's a question we can maybe try and ask, is that return of staff. Like I said, the plans they're looking at are more school, not sick, so I can ask that on Thursday if there's any focus being done on sick and the return of that.
Because I know companies, what they're doing is they set up a task force that
Yeah.
just does a HIPAA and all that, and so it's not shared with many
Yeah.
people, but when someone is sick, then they do the tracing, and then they also maybe potentially put people on quarantine that aren't sick because they've been close to somebody
Yeah.
that was in their cohort.
So the tracing would have a lot to do with our nurse as well. That's one of the things Jefferson County, I mean, they'll work with you, but they have a lot of schools.
Right.
So our school nurse would be invaluable in the tracing and helping with quarantine and guiding us and families as well.
They're suggesting that tracking and us to trace our own cases. There are suggestions and guidance in CDC that state that we would have to go, at least a section of the school would have to go 2 to 5 days in virtual mode to prevent further spread of the virus. So we may be, parts of the school may have to go virtual because we identified, some case in that grade class cohort. And so we may have to send some people on virtual at a moment's notice without, asking too many questions about it.
And some of the unknowns that we don't know exactly is, well, how many cases negate closing a classroom, how many cases negate closing one hallway versus shutting down elementary school versus shutting down middle school. And that's something that every school in our nation is dealing with right now. And we're waiting for guidance from Jefferson County and the Fort Health Association. They are coming up with some guidance to help us with that. I don't think it's medically sound for us to just kind of pick a number and be like, okay, this is our threshold. I think we need some really solid medical science behind what those numbers are. But I know that's what everyone wants, we want to know.
I have a question. So you guys talked about transportation, and now you basically came out in your presentation. By the way, you guys did a really great job putting all that together. Okay. But you're asking parents to bring their own kids to school, is best case scenario, highly recommended. But yet we're going to get into a contract with Lakeland, where we're going to have kids theoretically in every other seat unless they're a family unit. Does that mean we are going to have to expand the amount of busing that we need, thus increasing our costs of transportation?
They're confident that they can fit everyone within their buses, as far as we could tell today. We are going to still invest, study a little bit more research about the routes and how many kids per bus we would have to put in there, and if it's acceptable. Because if you have a lot of like sibling pairs or even trios, you would be able to have more kids in the bus without having to have a count of one per seat. You can have 2 or 3 per seat when they're siblings, because they're in the same household.
I think one of the other things, Michael, is that the transfer from the shuttle, if we want to use that word, from Palmyra Elementary, or shuttling elementary kids from Palmyra-Eagle, in a normal year, maybe that would take 3 buses. This year, it might take 6. Blaine was, or for a while, it might take that. Blaine was confident that he could work within the contract of where we are and what we're doing. As far as your question about encouraging more transportation, I think in some ways that just takes some of the pressure off the bus company and makes everything a little bit safer. And I think it maybe gives you as a parent a little peace of mind that your kid's not riding the bus,
So now we are encouraging people to just take their kids to the school that they belong to.
Yeah, I think that's great. I just don't want to get signed into a contract that is set up for worst case scenario, and our transportation company isn't being flexible like we are. So it's just a concern on my end, is being stuck with something that we're not going to use, and it's so bad, too bad, so sad.
And Blaine would tell you no matter what, because Blaine very much, if you've dealt with Blaine, wants to accommodate for every potential thing that might happen.
Okay.
So even though your son may never ride a bus, on May 2nd, you may take his car away, and you gotta call Blaine and say, somebody's gotta pick up my kid.
Yeah.
So he has to account for kids and be willing to be able to be flexible on a moment's notice. So, there's the transportation side of things is somewhat complicated as well,
Sure.
obviously.
I had to express my needs.
And we did say 1 per student per bus as much as possible. There are some 4 routes. We're hoping with siblings and what? No, 1 per route. You said one kid per bus. 1 kid per bus. 1 kid per student. No, I said what I said. 1 kid per student. 1 kid per student. Hopefully, again, using that idea of sit with people you're comfortable sitting with. Again, requiring of the face covering. There's a lot of things that, because we're going to because we're leaning towards requiring face covering, we can be a little bit more, I don't want to say lax, but like directions in the hallway. Every kid's got a face covering on. There's a little less concern about who's walking one way and who's walking the other way. So buses would be similar to that as far as, yes, we want them spaced, yes, we want them sitting by themselves, but that probably won't happen on every road.
As long as I know that they're going to be flexible with us.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
He said he would be a flexible.
And flexible throughout the year as circumstances change.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then if we're asking more parents to self-transport when possible, I'm assuming that you're making some plans to make drop off and pick up, so congested and less
We're trying to avoid crowds whenever humanly possible. Now, that's one of the biggest things, avoiding large gatherings, whether it's drop-off, pick-up, whatever point you want, trying to do this.
Encouraging hand sanitizer from home before they get on the bus, having our teachers hand sanitizer before they get on the bus from school to home.
If we have any access, we'll have some sort of, we can ban students from one place to the other. One consideration that Lane did mention was he can't just grow his fleet or get as many bus drivers as we need. That would be something that would take time to grow his capacity. So that's just a consideration to have.
Well, with the transportation now, I think the preliminary plan was to bring all the buses here and then have shuttles going to Eagle Elementary. Sounds like we're not gonna be able to use the same buses.
Today, we talked about a shuttle from the Palmyra Elementary School, and a route in Blaine's world is defined as when a bus leaves and when a bus returns. It's not defined by the kids on the route, if that makes sense.
So it sounds like we're gonna be paying more for busing this year.
No, I don't think so.
Well, I think we were gonna be paying more in the first place.
That could be. But the plan that we talked about today shouldn't deviate from whatever contract you have with him. That was never indicated with our meeting today.
And we're going to talk contract with more detail and more information as we get the registration finalized. That'll also be a helpful data that we can then use to plan routes and to really negotiate with him a contract.
My question was the face mask covering for, and since we're talking about transportation, the bus driver changed, I'm guessing, in the last few days. Whose recommendation was that?
It was initially a recommendation from Jefferson County to not. Then I got some feedback from Jefferson County to, and then Blaine actually came in and said that is his and his driver's car. As opposed to trying to build some type of plexiglass shield around, the face coverings were their preference.
Because then if there's an accident, there's additional safety concerns if you would put in additional, infrastructure.
Right, that they can't get out.
And more dirty points for kids to touch.
And that is another concern, not every kid touching the shield as they walk up.
And they're also attending a webinar, some sort of seminar for busing, for transportation. I guess it was next week, was it? For just to be better informed and to get better ideas of how to do the service better for us. And again, we're just negotiating the contract and we're going to get into it in the next month.
I know one of the challenging parts of this is that there are about 1,000 moving pieces that all are moving at the same time. And we aren't going to get some of the answers that we all want and need until school gets closer. We have some of those registration numbers. But I assure you that this team is absolutely trying to plan for every contingency possible based on high enrollment, low enrollment, mid enrollment, virtual, non-virtual choices, and really putting the time and the effort to make sure that whatever comes our way, we can meet those needs appropriately.
Thank you.
You guys, just one more question. Do you guys have an idea at this point of, say, your maximum number of students per classroom, or is that an unfair question to ask at this point?
They don't know around it.
Well, I schedule, so I do have high school schedules, obviously. I would say, if I was gonna ballpark it, I'll be honest, I haven't run it completely top to bottom. I would say I'm averaging probably around 15 to 17. I'll be transparent, where I could have went 3 sections, often I went 4. So I was able to do a little stretching. We have some challenges. I have a band program with almost 60 kids in it. Scott and I meet almost daily to talk about options. We have a wonderful outside facility we will use as much as humanly possible. We've talked about gyms, we've talked about potting them, grouping of kids. He is 100% on various options. I won't say I have no classes that are pushing over 20, but they're limited, they're less, and there's a lot of room in this building. If teachers are not comfortable in their classroom with 25 kids, we will find somewhere else for them to be. So that's, kind of where we are right now.
And the elementary, I think it's a maximum of 25. That's the biggest grade is 50 kids. So by 2 teachers, divided by 2 teachers, that would be 25 in each class. I think the maximum we'll ever have.
Yeah, based on last year's enrollment, projected enrollment, I think that was 14 sections of educators. I think I'd be able to get 8 of them between 18 and 20. So that's a big portion, and then the rest is gonna rely on actual enrollment.
Any more questions?
Yes. I have some questions about the face coverings.
Yeah.
Sorry, somebody's gotta do
No,
it,
no,
I'm
no.
sorry. So originally, well, okay, so I'm getting some major mixed signals
Yeah.
because you started the presentation with
Yeah, he did.
strongly
He went off track and
suggest.
we were working on
Okay,
that.
so strongly suggest, and then
Well, it was
that says
strongly
required all the
Yeah.
time. This
That
This
may not
said
be updated to what was
when,
up there.
right, when close contact,
And
so,
if I may say, it's just, the strongly suggested is not going to go into required by either the CDC or the county, Jefferson County, because they're there to advise us, to make suggestions of what we need to do. They're not there to really direct us that much, except for the part where we need to go,
Yeah.
virtual because we have an incident in the community.
So Katie and I had a lot and a lot and a lot and a lot of conversations about face covering. The long and the short of it, I guess, and I'll talk about why the verbiage changed, that was a recommendation from the epidemiologist.
okay,
So in the presentation the board saw, there were some that talked about if you're in a building, say you guys were the only people in here and you spread out, that you're more than 6 feet apart, you did not have to wear them, you could maintain them. I think that's going to be commonly thought of as okay. The long and short of what we're hearing from the health department and the epidemiologist is in a building, it doesn't matter unless you're the only person in a room. That said, we all know you need a break from it. I'll be honest, I want to take it off right now so bad I could cry. So we are going to have to build in time where we use outside facilities. We're going to have to build in time in the library maybe where kids can get way apart and they take a break from it. It's a lot. Katie and I, Kaylee, Alfredo, I do not want to spend the next 170 some days of school walking around telling kids to constantly put a mask on. But across the board, the recommendations are it is the best way to protect yourself and it is the best way to protect those around you. Every school that I've seen, every public school, I'll clarify, in Jefferson County that is going back to school face-to-face is requiring them. There are neighbors of ours that are requiring them. I think it's going to become a more common thing to require them, but that's kind of why some of the verbiage changed as far as not in close contact versus close contact. Now I'm looking at some of my teachers sitting down here. I'm sitting in my office by myself. I'm not going to be wearing it. They're sitting in their classroom by themselves, that part of things. And we are well aware that kids cannot walk in the building at 7:35 and walk out at 3:05 and never take it. So that's one of the things we're going to have to work on is how do we safely give them opportunities to remove that. I don't know if that answered your question or not.
If I can add, in the words of a virologist, another one of this Jefferson County, masks reduce between 65% and 85% the risk of infection. He states that if we had a vaccine that were that effective, we would be jumping like crazy in happiness about that. So this is a very good way to stop the virus from spreading to another person. It's not to protect yourself. This mask don't protect you. What protects you is that everyone wears them and they can't spread their viruses to you if you're healthy. Or you cannot spread the virus to anyone else if you are sick. And the thing is, you don't know that you're sick until 2 or 3 days later when you get that fever or some sort of symptom, but you can be asymptomatic and still contagious for 2 to 3 days before you even know that you have anything, or you are even able to report those symptoms. That's why the use of masks is very highly encouraged.
So we had a discussion where this sort of becomes like part of the dress code adoption of how we do business here at BFC to keep our students safe, and then we make considerations and working very, very hard to make this elementary appropriate for our students and building in what this looks like, making sure that our middle school, high school students, have proper guidelines for how we're going to do this safely, and sort of just adapting it as something that, for now is the operational norm to keep us here, to keep us safe, to stay open.
So, how are you going to get 4-year-olds to wear masks all day?
Fabulous. So I have a 4-year-old child myself, and it's a struggle. So we go to Target, and the 45-hour long trip that I make to Target is about the threshold that we have. So right now I'm working with our kindergarten educators to build in different procedures where there may be times when students are unmasked at the K-4, K-5 level, and instead we're adding a second protection layer to teachers. They may be masked and have a shield, so that they are taken care of and are more secure where students can interact. We're putting a lot of emphasis on making sure that every single one of my staff members at the elementary level has access to a see-through clear mask to be able to interact with children. My heart breaks when I think of anyone aged 5 through 10 going through a school day without seeing somebody smile or interact with somebody. That's a very challenging situation. And at the same time, my heart would break just as equally if someone were to become sick because they saw someone smile. So it really is a double-edged sword. And we're going to, one of the advantages is we have our kindergartners potted in a 4-room area. So that sort of is their cohort where they're going to eat together and learn together. So we have more flexibility to keep masks off when appropriate and to teach proper use and do the best that we can to make it a balanced approach to mask wearing throughout the day.
And that was one of our questions for Justin, or Fort Atkinson Health was, how do we get some of these younger kids to wear them? What are you seeing? And their stance back to me was if you can get 80% of them to wear them 80% of the day, your safety measures are unbelievably better than if nobody wears them other than that. So we know they won't wear them all the time. We know there will be kids that probably cannot wear it for various reasons. And we'll have to do, I mean, it says in there, younger learners and medically and 504 and special ed, we're going to have to deal with that. And just like when I walk into Walmart right now or Sam's Club, we have to teach our kids to not go, why doesn't that kid have a mask on? You know, it's the same thing we're doing as adults. I do what I walk in, why do I wear mine and they don't? I understand that. But again, that goes to that, helping our kids understand why we're doing what we're doing. And hoping and whatever you want to pray to, believing that wearing it now may get us out of it sooner. I don't know if anybody's seen the WIA campaign about wearing your mask so that they can wear their uniforms. Wear your mask so we can get back to normal. That is the strongest recommendation from the health department and Fort Health that we have. And again, working with Jefferson County Schools, the ones that are going back face to face, that's how they're going back. I understand nobody likes it. I understand a lot of people think it's a joke. I mean, you read the comments, they're all over. This is an issue that will make no one happy, and I understand it. But we have to think of the good of 600 kids and 100 staff members, and this is where we are right now.
And their families too, and their granddads and grandmothers and everyone, their uncles, everyone in the community.
Who's going to pay for the mask?
I'm sorry?
Where the mask going to come from?
Okay, so DPI already sent us 1,500 masks.
This lovely model here.
Yeah, right there.
It's
We
not
have-
horrible, it's a little warm, but it's not horrible.
That one seems terrible.
Yeah, those are worse than mine.
It's done nothing but fall off your face
Yeah,
this entire time.
adult size
Well,
mask.
I've been wearing it.
They did,
So I'm like.
and we are also contemplating purchasing adjustable masks that can be a little bit better adjusted for kids as well. And we will, of course, we would be purchasing those, as many necessary to accommodate our kids.
They would also be able to bring their own. I mean, I think there's a lot of kids that like the one they have, like their Spider-Man one, that's what my nephew was wearing. He thinks it's cool, you know, so a lot of it is from home. We would have them to provide for kids who forgot or don't have them. Again, we know there's a lot of logistics with it, and it needs to not be a concern in place of education, so that, you know, trying to get it as normal as we can, as soon as we can to move forward.
We'll need to make some adjustments in the student handbook regarding like what's on it, decorative things and things like that to match
We
other
were-
regulations for wardrobe in the school.
There was even talk of decorating your mask for the first day, you know, making it look, if it's so white, you can make it look nicer and, you know, put some stickers on it or a face shield if you have a face shield.
We're trying to take a very polarizing and politicized issue and turn it into something that students have buy-in into. At elementary level, like Operator said, we're working with donations right now to have every student create a mask that's kept at school as a backup mask if they forget their own and they're coming in their locker or wherever. So that it's something that isn't a negative attribute, but it's just something like the WIA campaign with professional sports, that we wear this so we can wear our uniforms. Make it something that we have to have buy-in to. It's not easy.
I'm not real concerned about our students wearing their masks. It's what is expected of their families and the attitudes that they take. There's been a recent study regarding masks and the correlation to when seatbelts were required. Having lived through my father not putting on his seatbelt and stuff, when my children were little, they would notice if somebody forgot to buckle up. They would be like, Grandpa, why didn't you buckle up? So I have absolutely no concern with our little ones. Middle school maybe, because their idea of wearing a mask might be down here.
I'm working on
or
the
here,
school
or
ones. The cheap school
something
ones I'm
else.
working on.
But I have every confidence that our kids will do what is expected, and it will be perceived as a norm, just as wearing their seatbelt does.
And I think that parental, while we know we will not change every parent's mind on their own views of it, the idea that this is what is required at school right now, working with parents to try and get as much support as we can. You know, like, we may agree to disagree, but this is where we are right now. And again, as soon as we can stop, there isn't anybody in the world who would wear it if they didn't have to. Let's be honest, other than people working in the medical profession. If we didn't have to, we wouldn't. So.
And with all of our stores, not all of them, but a good portion of our stores requiring them, it's becoming much more commonplace. I go back to the seatbelts. It's just much more commonplace, and it's what people are going to be doing.
The governor is still considering mandating masks, so I mean, that could happen tomorrow, and then all this causes.
After the first of all.
But you guys have done an amazingly wonderful and thorough job. It's very you put it into it because you care about keeping our students and our staff safe. That comes out in absolutely everything you're saying and doing. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Will you guys be able to make this slideshow available to our families?
I feel like that's your next step. I guess, I don't know really where, I don't know if we're to a vote today or where we are, but to at least, make this public, I guess. I would like a board approval before it's made public. I do need to, there's a couple of typos I need to say.
So the announcements for our next partnership. So one of the things that's important to us is we do all the data in the world. And you're a great representation, but it's important for us to be united in whatever choices we're offering our students. So we look forward to maybe discussing and decide sort of what that prevailing option is going to be. If we're offering that 5-day full day, or if we're offering the 4-day as the prevailing, and then that gives us direction as a team to dig as deep as possible into all the and what then does to make sure that our plan is vetted and appropriate, but we feel like we need that unified direction and support from the board before we can move forward.
What is your recommendation from your team and your committee that you'd like the board to make a motion for?
I think it's hard to look at the data that does lean heavily towards 5-day and probably say that's not where we should start. But I understand some of the distinct advantages that come with the 4-day option. So I would like to keep it very tightly in the back of my pocket, I guess is how I look at things. I'm only speaking for me, I will not speak for them. But I think looking at the data with almost 59% of the respondents wanting that 5-day option, that's probably.
And I think it's all of our recommendation to start in the 5 days format, with an option just for legal purposes of going online, virtual, for those kids that their parents feel like they need to. We may make changes afterwards. They may be necessary, and just to keep it flexible as well. We will have to keep it flexible.
So if you dig in deeper, if the board approves, yes, you are going to start with a 5-day option and also the flexibility for people who choose virtual. I would think that if it comes down to it, that we do notice schools are working better if they have that middle day for deep cleaning or for students, that would be a little easier for you to switch to because you've already got the virtual and the in-person.
Yeah, going from a 5 to 4 days is an easier transition than
going from.
The recommendation of the 5 days and for at least the first 3 weeks, we hope we can get through 3 weeks, because it creates better rapport with the teachers, from the students to the teachers. It is better for the kids as well. It's just, we have to keep people in mind, and their options are.
I also want a disclaimer that it's July 28th. and we are
We had a month ago.
30 days away, and we don't, but we need some focus to start working on some of those procedures, to start working on some of those more, the bus routes and the supplies and some of that.
So I have a question. Obviously, our teachers are on the front lines and they do amazing things every day for our kids in our community. I want to make sure that they feel adequately supported in all that we ask them to do. And when we're talking 5-day face-to-face, but also giving virtual options to families that choose that, how are we planning to make sure that we don't have a teacher teaching from 7:30 in the morning till 10:30 at night?
So that is a topic of a lot of debate right now. We have explored a myriad of options that would not require anything extra from our teachers, but that does probably require a longer commitment from families. So like I will use an example of I have purchased my online platform. So if a kid decides to take astrology because they're not coming to school, they can't switch at a quarter and sit in Sue Fisher's Algebra 2 class. That doesn't work. So again, that's going to probably require some more commitment. I think a lot of it will depend on who the kids are. I think a blended format where maybe they are in school, at least up here, and then I'll let Katie speak for herself and Alfreda. Up here, a couple hours a day, taking some of those classes that are harder to translate, maybe an option. And to be frank, we may have to look at using some teachers in different ways. Maybe they're not teaching as many classes, maybe some things are shifting. The thing that, and they can attest, the thing that we have fought against the most, I cannot have every teacher teaching 12 kids in front of them and 7 kids at home every class period, day in, day out, day in, day out. I'll be real transparent, Alfredo and I have some struggles on that concern, but I know the burden that we put on my staff, and I will fight for that. Katie, you can speak, or Alfredo can speak.
So the elementary levels, some of the issues that are going to come out of this, and I need to know who would prefer virtual. So for example, if I end up having 4K, 8 fifth graders, and then a third grader, we could possibly move some caseload around to support teachers in a very minimal additional workload. But if I also at the same time recognize that I may have a staff member who's not comfortable returning, we need to honor that emotion and that sentiment as well. So that may be a great opportunity to pair a staff member who wishes to not return physically with some of those students virtually. And that may be a virtual point person within our building. But again, that's very dependent on the caseload and the students that are and families that are requesting that situation. And then we would also possibly make use of the programs, some of the programs that Carrie's been investigating, where we could refer students to a wonderful educational program that supports the needs of our district, but is run by additional teachers who are not employed by us. But it's going to depend on how many of those kids really want to get, are requesting that virtual option in lieu of the 5-day face-to-face.
So we have another board meeting in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And wow, hello, right? So registration is going to be closed in 2 days. You know, we're talking about hypotheticals. So let's, at the next board meeting, let's bring some hard data and talk about what's some.
So that would be my hope, is that whatever we move forward and whatever we're okay to share out, we could then start getting information from families and staff who are on the lower end of the comfort spectrum. Whether this presentation makes them more comfortable or less comfortable, or where we are, and then so we can get down to who are the kids that don't want to return, and how can we program for each of them individually. We're small enough to be able to do that. It is scary, and you want to make sure families are making the choice to stay home for the right reasons, because educationally, we all know sitting in a classroom is never going to be the same as sitting at home. No matter what format we pick, it is never going to be the same. So making sure the families are educated on what we can do, what we will do, versus what will be offered here, I think is going to be huge in helping them make the right choice for their students.
And I'm with Michael that on the meeting, we need to have more data, because that'll tell us how many teachers we actually have for online, so that we could, redirect to online, that we could do a lot of things with. And it's just a plan that is something that we have to be working with. We're probably going to be making modifications as we learn better or more things, as we learn more about the impact in the community. So I would just let's stay flexible and get more data and be able to come up with a better solution for everyone. Haley, you have something? You're welcome.
Board monitoring B, the update from the WIA on July 23rd for the games and fall sports.
I can say it for you. The meeting went on for over 3 hours, and the end result was that low-risk sports, which is nothing we offer except for cross-country, boys and girls, swimming, tennis, and golf, will start on August 17th, which was the original date anyways, but soccer, volleyball, boys and girls, football, might be forgetting one, all start September 7th, which is Labor Day. They talked about that quite a bit in the meeting. Those teams do not officially start practice until then. In the meantime, scheduling is an interesting, ongoing wheel of craziness. The Tri-Ways Conference met immediately after the WA meeting, what would have been Thursday afternoon, I think. Our football-only conference is meeting this Thursday at 9 o'clock, because that's a whole other situation. But we'll get that worked out. It sounds like there's 2 competing plans. One is just play your conference schedule and no WA tournament, or somehow truncate your conference schedule and have some levels of the WA tournament. But the WA clearly said, do not expect there to be some kind of championship season for any of the sports this year. It may just be you have conference. The goal is to allow students to practice, work with each other, and compete locally, and what we can do from there. And varsity takes highest priority. JV, if we can get some games in, and middle school may kind of get just whatever we can make them offer, but it's all about safety. There's much conversation about who's going to be allowed when we go back indoors for some events. We think there might be a surge of officials that want to suddenly officiate again if there are no parents at any event. It's been talked about by many people. Maybe it'll only be the student athletes and maybe an administrator or 2, and just athletics going on.
And scorekeepers.
I'm scorekeepers. Official grade will still be there at the table. We might not need car patrol. And on top of that, Alfredo and I are kind of working on restructuring some of that to cut some costs in terms of the number of people who are working events if we don't necessarily need them, or some people doubling up. Anything else? And yes, this campaign WA is putting out, I think, is great and pushing, and I actually would love to show you all the masks that we've kind of got designed. The samples came today, all the way.
They're all around here somewhere.
Okay. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But we have 14 different designs that are Palmyra-Eagle specific, with the panther and purple and different combinations for the behind the ears. I think there's 10 bucks and like 10 over the head now. So we're looking at the minimum order, I think, is 100. We're probably going to order maybe 50, but most people probably order 100 of one design or another design. But Karen and I kind of talked about, we may sell them to students at like a loss of $1 per item, and maybe provide one for the staff or something along those lines. We'll find some money to make it work. The boosters want to get them, but it's just constantly changing. I joke that babies are all on hamster wheels. They're just working really, really hard and going nowhere, just in case something happens, but if not, we'll be ready one way or the other.
Okay, thanks, Joel.
Yep.
Committee reports. 3 out of the 4 committees reported at the last regular board meeting, and unless there's nothing new in there, the one committee that has met in between would be PR. So, Kara, do you want to do a committee report today for PR, or if you want to hold it off to the regular meeting in the 11th, that's up to you.
I can just hit it real quick, and take care of it. So just to recap briefly, we did talk about creating a kind of a senior citizen opportunities info page and highlighting some of the things that the district is able to offer to people that don't necessarily have students in the district, like the new STEP program, some of the veterans programs that we have, and we found in policies that weren't necessarily advertised, like the free activities about different ways to recruit more volunteers within the community, so far as even recruiting a volunteer coordinator, someone that is well connected with the community, reach out to maybe retired teachers and things like that, that can help support the things that we do, whether it's athletics or in the classroom, things like that. And just different ways to do a better job of keeping the community in general informed, whether it's through emails, press releases, flyers, newsletters, calendars, things like that. Talked about COVID, because every conversation does have that in it nowadays. We talked about marketing our school financials. I know Alfredo did a great job putting together those things. And hopefully those will be ready to go out on the district website very soon. So that'll be great to share with the community, so they can see what we've been able to do and how we look going forward, and feel confident enrolling their kid here, knowing that they're safe, we're stable, we're here to stay. And then we also talked kind of lastly about, again, getting that community involvement and having representatives in contact with the Chamber of Commerce and the town and villages, and seeing if there's things that we can do in the district level to support maybe some of the town and village needs. I'm reaching out, whether it's having shop class filled benches to put out in the village or in the parks and things like that. So we just really want to concentrate on that.
Thank you. Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Consent agenda approved. Action items, we tabled A till the 11th, but action item B, consider approval of preliminary presentation regarding back to school plan year 2021. I'm assuming that what we've been asked for is a motion to approve basically the 5-day in-person plan with the virtual option for our students and staff that are uncomfortable coming. So, and I mean, obviously there's always going to be, this is fluid, it could change at any time, but I don't think that needs to be included in this motion. So,
I'll make a motion to consider approval of the preliminary presentation regarding back to school plan for the 2021 school year, including the 5-day face-to-face with the option for virtual for those students and families requesting it.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion carries. You guys gotta leave and go back to work. Obviously, it takes a lot of time. Any announcements or board comments?
I just want to thank our great staff. You guys, so many new faces and crazy things to deal with, and you guys have really done an amazing job building a team, a new team, an awesome team, and I'm really proud and confident in the direction we're going. So I just want to thank you for all of your time and efforts and commitment. Thank you.
And I like what you guys said, it's all about the kids. So keep that, that's awesome.
Thank you.
Can I say thanks to the board for letting us hold graduation? I don't know how many of you were able to watch it. To dance with his daughter raised there, some kind of hand gesture. It was fantastic. A lot of work and planning went into it, and I have to thank Sue Fisher and Gigi Lane, who were my right hand women here and all of it. But thank you for the support. Not every district was able to do it, and it was great to do.
It was great to see all the pictures and the smiling faces.
Yeah. Outside, they were outside, both of each other, not in the building.
Can I also say how wonderful it was once again that our students did so well in the way of receiving scholarships and awards for a little school. We are so supportive of our children, and they earn local, state, national scholarships just by being good students.
Yeah, that was a great.
And you guys are, the staff is very much a part of that.
Yeah, you guys know what you're doing.
Great. Upcoming meetings and events, the regular board meeting is on the 11th, Tuesday. We're hoping it'll be back in the gym, 7 o'clock. The other committee meetings are in the agenda, and they're also posted, so I won't read through all of those. Can I have a motion to adjourn to closed session based on the subsections of section 19.85 that are listed on the posted agenda.
I'll make a motion to adjourn to closed session.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? We need to take a roll call vote to move into closed section, so I would ask for that.
Doris Parsons,
Yes.
Jean Reed,
Yes.
Michael Eddy,
Yes.
Mitzi Rosinski, Tara Leroy,
Yes.
Zachary Rutkowski,
Yes.
and Christiana Williams.
Yes.